Hi everyone, Michael from Pixeesoft here. Welcome to the first stand-up in this 7-day sprint. We'll go through our Scrum board, define today's focus, and describe the tackled tasks. On this channel, we talk about software development, agile, and everything in between. So if you're new here, thanks for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss the next video in the series. As you can see, the whole scene is lifted. That's because the daily Scrum, also known as Standup, is performed standing up, so that it doesn't take too long while people get comfortable in their meeting rooms, sitting down and talking for hours. Usually the stand-up or daily Scrum would begin with the synchronization of the team, what has happened between now and the last stand-up. This might be a bit meta, but in fact I already have a lesson learned, even though this is the first stand-up. I spent a significant amount of my weekend editing the sprint planning video. While some delays are to be expected, after all, I'm a programmer and not an editor, I frankly didn't expect that much of a delay. Part of it is as well my lack of experience with DaVinci Resolve, which crashed on me 2 hours into editing, and I learned there wasn't any autosave in place. Even though I don't do any fancy color grading and 3D tracking effects, it does take time to cut the video and post-process the audio so that it delivers the message and sounds okay. So despite the stand-ups being short and to the point, the content delivery takes some time as well. I need to factor that in for the next sprint planning. So onward to what will happen today. These are the 3 tasks I will occupy myself with. Create a Git repository for the Auth service, create a Docker container for the Auth service, and create a database for the Auth service. All of these 3 tasks have their respective definition of done. Some of the steps may now seem as futile to define, but it helps for visibility. Everybody knows what needs to be done, and there's no black box and magical engineering. Full transparency for better or worse. The code for the Auth service is stored in an SVN repository in on-premise infrastructure solution. While it was okay until now, if we want to step up our game, we need something that's more robust and extensible. That's where tools such as GitLab, Bitbucket, and GitHub come handy. For open source software, I love GitHub. For private repositories, I have been using Bitbucket and enjoyed it very much, so I'll stick with it for now. For clean slate purposes, I will initiate the repository with single commit and leave out the history. The history is still accessible in the SVN repo, but going onward, I think it won't be needed as the project is in MVP stage anyway. Last but not least, the installation guide should be transformed to a markdown formatted document as a README. This shouldn't take more than an hour. Next up, Docker container. In order to be able to debug and test the service in a reproducible manner, it's important to containerize the code. That will allow for local testing and easy deployment. This step has some amount of unknown. Some constants and URLs are hard-coded. What needs to be done to make sure they're overwritable on start? I don't know. I have to find out. Once identified, a Docker file should be in place with all necessary configurations. Secret management and etc. can be further reviewed and extended at a later stage when Kubernetes deployment is being handled. Also, a Docker Compose file should be in place in order to spin up an ephemeral MySQL database in a container sideways for debugging purposes. All of this should be described in the README. If everything goes well, this should take a maximum half a day. Next up, database. The 3rd task is joined at the hip with the containerization of the service itself. One cannot be without the other. But basically, the Auth service has a .SQL file describing the structure of the database. It would be great to have an automatic spin-up of this database on demand for testing purposes. But also, there should be a reproducible way how to spin it up in GCP, namely the Cloud SQL offering. I'm not sure if this can be done via Terraform or Ansible, but such tools should be definitely considered for later stage. This task is hard to estimate as it is sort of part of the containerization task, but it shouldn't take more than half a day either. Combined on paper, the tasks are just slightly over 1 man day, but the database and the Docker task do overlap, so it should be doable unless I face some major roadblocks. So that's all for the stand-up, and I'll check in with you tomorrow on our next daily scrum. But let's hear from you now. What are you working on today? Are you facing any roadblocks? Let me know in the comment section below. That's it for now. Thank you for watching. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you tomorrow.